Welcome back, folks. Told you it wouldn't be too long for our next one. I am, of course, joined by a wonderful face there. It's Jean-Georges Perrin, a member over at PayPal, with a very interesting discussion to have. In fact, we're going to be doing a different kind of method with this one. It's going to be more like a kind of interview, as we're going to get into depth on, I believe the subject is 1 year in a data mesh at PayPal. So maybe to open up, John, you can tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I like to try the innovation part. So my name is Jean-Georges Perrin, and I often go by JGP unless you've taken
Okay.
many years of French at school. Um, I build innovative data platforms at PayPal. I'm also the president and the co-founder of ADA-UG, the Artificial Intelligence Data and Analytics Users Group. I am one of the few lifetime IBM champions, and I wrote the second edition of Apache Spark in Action, published by Manning. Okay, and I'll stop there.
So you've done a few things, I think, is what we're getting. You got a little bit of experience. I mean, I guess open up first of all, JGP. How many years have you been with PayPal? I think you've been there a while, right?
No, actually, PayPal is kind of a recent experience.
Okay.
I joined last year to solve some of their data ambition projects,
Okay.
and but before that, I was a consultant for a long time, and I also was an enterprise architect for Advanced Auto Parts. As you said, I've done a few things or two. So yeah.
You've had your fingers in a few pies. You've been in a few places, and let's talk a little bit about your role at PayPal and what brought you there. You know, they were looking for a new solution, and I believe it led you into the world of data meshes to provide that architecture they're looking for, right?
Yeah. So PayPal is a wonderful company, and we have, as you can imagine, a lot of data. Like when I say a lot, it's a lot of data. And we have a lot of consumer of data. So, for example, the part of PayPal where I'm attached to is more in the risk area and the credit risk. It's not like when you're doing a transaction and right away I'm telling you, hey, Darren, you're doing something silly. It's more like a little bit afterwards, like trying to establish patterns, feed people with strategies, and, and um, and those interesting things. So they need a lot of data. They need a lot of data from many data sources. And so far, before I joined, um, there was already a lot of self-service features. There was a lot of all this data was available to our data scientists. We've got huge armies of data scientists, um, and but we wanted to have to make their life easier. Okay, so ease discovery, ease make sure it's also more and more compliant. We're living in a very compliant world, and it's getting more and more. Okay, so um, all was good, but we wanted to make it better. And that's when I joined last December with this mission of specifically working on a data platform for our risk organization.
Yeah, and specifically like how you came to select that architecture. You know, if you kind of alluded to that a little bit, like the nature of the data becomes quite
Yeah.
archaic, right? So maybe speak more
So,
to that.
yeah, sure. So when I joined, we really didn't. I didn't join, okay, to build a data mesh. Okay, that was
Okay.
not the goal. Like, hey, I just want
Oh.
to find. I found this new buzzword, and it would be cool if you give me a few $1 million, and I'm going to play with something, and it looks like it's a data mesh or something. Okay, so it didn't really work that way. Um, Fortunately, right? So we first listed our main needs. Okay, and as I told you, the main need was really ease discovery. Um, Making sure that the discovery is also more in context. Okay, so it's easy to have discovery, but having contextual discovery is a bit more complex. Making sure that the process are all governed, so we know who's doing what, at a finer grain, and and make sure that we we adapt the tools that our data scientists are using, like most likely notebooks. So when we listed those features and a few more, what we realized is that, oh, well, we don't have much of a choice. We could do yet another data lake or yet another data warehouse, or we let's explore this idea of a data mesh. Okay, so
Mm.
which sounded very interesting, especially when you're thinking from a data governance perspective. The data mesh is pushing the data governance more on the team. It doesn't mean that you don't have a central data governance team anymore, right? That's it's not in opposition of it, but it's more federated, and then you you involve a lot more the team and the people. I would say on the factory plant than really the people in the big towers of headquarters. Okay, so
Okay.
that was something that really I think pushed us a little bit more towards the data mesh when we decided.
This whole idea of empowering the collective workforce involved in the process, right? Instead of just having it
Correct.
more or less sorted by one or two specialized people, which is just a good way to
Yeah.
go. And maybe could you describe the specific architecture in more depth, right? I'm sure we will want to hear more about it.
Sure. So one thing which I really like about data mesh and so and all the writings and the initial writings done by Jean-Marc Degani on that is that she's push the way I interpret it is pushing all what we've been doing in agile in software engineering, pushing it to data engineering. Okay, so even if a lot of organizations I've been with, when they say, "Oh, we are agile," even at the data engineering level, okay, they
Mm-hmm.
often are very waterfall because they have sliced time to do something. It's not, yes, it's divided in sprints, but it's not because you align on a 2 week cadence that you're actually agile, right? It's more like you've got mini waterfall in 2 weeks. So I think that that's helping quite a bit to understand why a lot of people are looking at the data mesh as well right now. When it comes to the architecture, yeah, we can talk a little bit what's under the what's under the hood when it think to when we're thinking um, about data mesh. First, I see you've got this notion of mesh, right? You've got you're meshing something um, like a net,
Yeah.
like the mesh on your chair, or so it's really the interesting thing is what when you're thinking about it is what are you really meshing, and whether you're meshing is what we call data quanta. Well, it's not us only, but we see the data quanta as this atomic deliverable that can work with one another. So data quanta plural, data quantum singular, and you can see the data the you could imagine a data quantum as something almost like a data mart. Okay, it's very small in nature. It's aligned to a domain or an area um, um, or a specific uh, business problem you're trying to solve, and that's what I would define your domain and your line to it. But
Okay.
traditionally, when you're thinking about data engineering, you're having this data pipelines. Okay, you've got the source and it goes to your destination, right? And you're doing the transformation in the middle, and you're still doing that. Okay, data mesh is not removing this part. You still have to have this migration of data. However, in data mesh, you've got other things that are looking at your data quantum, that are looking at live at your data, like observability, like discoverability. And I told you what was one of our big need, and also control. So you've got this kind of three antennas that are kind of looking at your data
Mm-hmm.
all the time. And where it starts to be super interesting is that, well, every data quantum is having the same three antennas in a way, okay, the same three
Okay.
axes to it. So I'm solving a problem for you, Darren, and my team is delivering a data quantum for you. But hey, then let's say Zivil has another problem, and she wants me to deliver another data quantum. But the two data quanta are going to be completely aligned. The three ports are going to be the same APIs, the same the same interaction, the same expected behavior. Okay,
Mm.
which when you compare to data mart, it's not that. When you compare to a database, you're thinking, hey, yeah, I can access a few things from the database, but it's different if you're using Oracle, Informix, DB2, or MySQL, right? Everything is kind of is kind of really proprietary. The idea of data mesh and the data quantum to create this isolation layer on top of your data, I think makes it really an interesting, very interesting part in
Yeah,
the
to
architecture.
kind of like cannibalize your articulate way of putting it, it's kind of like a pre-filter logic, right? Like before you even get into the filtering idea that you usually place on a database, it's a way of pre-configuring the data that's coming in, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And you've got all this, and you standardize all those things. Okay, so when it's kind of standardized, it what does it mean? It's really that your um, every component you're adding to your mesh, okay, is
Hmm.
going to have the same behavior. Um, I gave you an example for two data quanta, but you can imagine having hundreds or thousands of them, and then your customers, the data scientists, will just access all of that, and have the same experience, the same behaviors, the same results, all that in a very homogeneous way.
Yeah, it sounds like this is the type of thing that long term would make data retrieval a lot more efficient, right? Like in terms of the amount that you're having to source for a start.
Correct. So what's going to be in the long term really useful as well is the way you're collecting observability metrics, right?
Hmm.
So who is using what, how much it's being used, you know um, who's the biggest consumers, and that whatever regardless of the technology you're using underneath. Okay, so the big benefits of that is that you're meshing at the same time your metadata for observability,
Hmm.
and you can build a stronger resilient data platform.
Okay, and you're only a year. I say only. Maybe that's a lot in this process. I imagine it's not. You're only a year. I'm going to go with it anyway. Into this process at PayPal. How far through this journey are you in terms of implementation? How good is it looking right now, and what do you perceive in the future for it?
So we started we started as I joined in December. We had our kickoff in January. We decided that the we started our development like in January, February of what we wanted to do, and then we realized that's the funny thing is we realized in March that what we were building was actually a data mesh. Okay,
Okay.
so since then we started following more of the patterns, and we delivered our first prototype proof of concept of what we wanted to demonstrate in May. And since May, we've added new features based on the feedback from our users. We add, of course, evolutions and new feature requests and bugs and tech debt and all this natural things you do in the software engineering world. And then, sorry, then we had to integrate with all the PayPal system, and that's actually the phase where we are now. So we are integrating with all our PayPal systems, and that's taking a little bit more time. But we're really thinking that it should be up and running with a significant amount of data quanta in production, like ish. I was hoping to be production before we talk together, but it's going to be probably early December or something. So really soon.
Okay.
So
But it's everything's being built from the ground up by the sounds of it, right? You're not like buying an existing data mesh or some sort of pre-configured software here, right?
no, no. So there's some vendors that so there's some vendors that pretend that they have solutions that are kind of data mesh in a box kind of thing. I I have not seen something yet. I'm not saying it's not out there. I don't want to have any problem with legal. There might be something, but I haven't seen something that was matching all our needs as a data mesh platform. Um, so right now we are really in the implementation and integration and deployment phase, and we're following agile as well. Okay, so feature driven, cross functional teams, etc., etc. So yeah.
Okay. And the focus and the end goal of this, right? Is it just only focused around the analytics, or is there a wider reach to this?
So that's a great question. Data mesh by nature is agnostic to how you are going to consume the data, the principle of it. Okay, so we're the data mesh itself can be analytics, can be operational data, but what we've chosen is to go first with analytics because that's our use cases. Okay, so but as we are going and as we're discovering with more use cases within PayPal, we are also planning on adding more ways of consuming the data. And so and we've got two or three ways more, whether the fundamentals, whether it's operational data or analytics data, but also whether I want to be able to get my data being streamed, dump in files at a regular interval, all those things, all that. So it's going to be the responsibility of each data quantum to do that, or a separate application. But all that that's the use cases that data mesh supports. So we're good.
Okay. You said there's some other areas you're looking to maybe use it in. Are you at liberty to kind of briefly discuss some of those potential applications?
Well, so yeah, I can talk about. So a lot of the data is being used there for reporting to our higher ups. Okay, so to C-levels, to strategists, um, and that's an excellent use case for analytics. Okay, so they collect massive amount of data, and they do that, and they make the reports. A lot of the applications as well are for internal purpose. Okay, so we've got some applications, for example, for monitoring fraud or monitoring security, and they take data from really a lot of data sources. So and those are either consumers of analytics data or operational data. And when we're thinking about operational data, it could be something like um, Dun and Bradstreet data, Experian data, data from INSEE in France, or whatever. Okay, so this is the kind of data that could come into our system as well, and available as a data mesh. In this situation, it's more atomic operations, more record-based operation, and that's where you would see more of a use for operational data.
Interesting. And it sounds like there's going to be potentially big ripple effects for PayPal down the line. What do you see as the impact of this direction on a company like PayPal as a whole? Like, let's say in 5 years, like, what do you think the kind of impact this could be?
Well, I think I
Sorry, I've
there's
asked
a
you to
few.
paint me like the Mona Lisa in a matter of seconds there, haven't I?
No, 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 no. But I'm a believer. Okay, I'm really a believer in data mesh. I think that Shamak Nagani did an awesome job in describing it. Um, I'm not an avid reader. That's not really how I learn. But I read a book twice. So it's really, and it's, to be fair, it's not an easy book. But
Okay.
but I think it's a highly recommended book when it comes to the evolution of that. And but that's as a preface to your question. I
Mhm.
think that when it comes to any company size, data mesh can be a great application. Okay, and the more complex, the more distributed your company is, I think data mesh is bringing even more value. Okay, so I don't have the ambition to know how we process transactions, let's say in the Philippines, but someone knows how to do that and and is an expert in that at PayPal. And
Mm.
so I'm really happy to provide him with the tools, or her with the tools that they can use to build something that will be usable by anyone in the company with the right
Yeah.
access, blah 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 blah. But the thing is, so that's how I see the evolution of the data mesh and this data platforms there. You need data. You're a producer of data. You want your data to be used. You put it into the data mesh. It's being consumed by other people, and the system is smart enough to know, okay, I need this data, like this data is not used anymore, or there's a new version of this data, and we're informing users, and there's a really a life cycle around the data as well. And you really have something like one of the principle of data mesh being data as a product. Okay, so um, the you really have a catalog of products, a very rich catalog of products, which things that are starting to be a little bit old, things which are going to be a bit newer, models, etc., etc., all that combined in this catalog, and that's where the mesh is going to shine. And that kind of project, that yeah, maybe that's going to be something like the key data platform for analytics at PayPal in 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me
Don't
like,
don't
you're trying to provide
don't
the.
quote, yeah, don't quote me. Okay, so if we talk
Okay.
in five
Okay.
years,
All right, no, no, no. I'll just paste it across. You remember we made that statement? Where are we at now? But of course, because what you're describing here is you're trying to provide the building blocks, right? Like to other solutions. Like that's the way it just sounded like to me is that you're
yes,
providing these tools that are meant to be used in a vast amount of different ways by specialized people over at PayPal.
correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. And
And
I heard
and
you
and there's
mention.
no sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry. No, no, please.
No, and there's no limit to it. That's what I just wanted to say. Okay, so it's
Okay.
there's virtually no limits to it. So because
Mhm.
it's all cloud based, it's poly cloud, it's hybrid cloud. So there's potentially no limit
Okay.
to your architecture there.
Well, someone that usually does have a limit is the amount of principles, because I heard you mention one of the principles before, and I've done my rounds in tech. I know how this works. How many principles are we dealing with here? What are they? Run me through them, JGP.
Okay, so the data mesh is driven by four principles. Okay, so it's really, there's not, there's not 20, there's not 12, like the 12 factor app or anything. It's really four, and there's no more. So as I mentioned, I already mentioned two, I think. um
Hmm.
but so in the order, you've got the domain ownership. Okay, so when you're building these data elements, you really stick to a domain. Okay, you're not trying to boil the ocean. You're thinking um, about your domain. You align the business and the technology. You and you can scale the number of teams. Okay, because you can, let's say team A is on domain A, team B is on domain B, and team C and D are in domain C. Okay, uh,
Hmm.
but because you're architected this way, well, it's easier. You're really focusing on where the business is. You you can scale, and it removes the dependency on a central data team, right? When you've got a central data team that is building your ETL processes and all that, it's creating a bottleneck. If you're pushing that domain ownership at the team level, then no need to push that there anymore. So that's the first principle. The second principle is about data as a product. Okay, so if you are, I'm selling you data as a product, and I like to take to compare the analogy to a car. So if you are a normal person, not a car aficionado or car collector, you want something which is standard, produced in large quantities, that is easy to maintain, that you can bring to your shop, and you've got a selection of shops to do the service. Everything can be, from parts to maintenance to service, everything can be easily procured, right? That's kind of the ideal solution when you're looking for a car. So why not for data? Okay. um, and then you can also, if you push the comparison to that, you can think about, okay, I need an evolution. Okay, I want CarPlay in my car, for example, now. Okay, so that's available only in the 2021 version of the car, and now I want this hybrid catalytic blah 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 something, and that's a 2022 version. So the thing is, this is really, of course, it's consumerism as well, because don't get me wrong. Okay? But the thing is, you're also pushing this ability to life cycle your product, which I think in the same thing, we've not been doing that really well with with products. So that's with data, I mean, sorry. So that's a second principle. The third principle is a principle of self-service. So I often take I know we are in a European crowd here. I I was born in France and I lived a long time in France. Uh, but when you're going to a gas station, you actually pump yourself, right? I don't think there is a country in Europe where you rely on someone else to pump for you. When you go to New Jersey, for example, here in the US, you have someone to pump for yourself. I think in Oregon as well. Or I'm working a lot with people in India, or in India. Okay, someone is pumping for you. So the thing is, the analogy here is just interesting, that is it faster to go to the pump yourself, get out of here, or go to the pump, wait for someone to come, get someone to pump, to have this discussion, this transaction discussion with someone, and then this person is going to pump for you, and then you pay, or you pay before, and then you go away. Okay, so what looks like it's easier, it's better service, is actually bringing more friction, and it adds a number of gates in your processes. So same thing, you've got to be able to do it at a data level as well. Okay, you want to reduce friction, you want people to find the data, you want people to use the data in an easy way, without asking, without asking and filling forms. Okay, you want that process to be streamlined. So that's a big benefit of self-service. There's one catch, however. If you're creating a self-service platform or self-service tooling, and you do not have any governance in place, you're creating a monster, because everybody's going to do whatever they want. It's going to be total anarchy, and that's actually bringing to the fourth principle, which is a principle, and that's a mouthful, of federated computational governance. Um,
Okay.
there is so there I have another analogy, which is also very US centric. Look at how the US, yeah, it's funny because, being French and American, I
They've
can
Americanized you. I'm hearing it.
yeah, yeah, don't say brainwash. Okay, but anyway, uh, no, but look, I think it's a model that everybody knows, in the world knows, is when you're looking at how the U.S. government at least should work. Okay, you've got this federal government, and you've got a bunch of states. Um, and so the states are very close to the reality of things, right? They are dead on what's in the field. Once more, factory plants, flood local rivers, local issues, all that's really at the state level. But you have a need to behave and have a vision as a nation, and that's what the federal government is doing, right? So it doesn't work one with versus the other, it works one with the other. So same thing in a company, okay, except for I don't think any company is really democratic, but besides the point, governance can be done the same way. Okay, so you've got a central organization who knows better, who knows what data governance is, which is kind of not always easy to do that. Who establish policies, what's PII, what's regulatory, what's the data classification, how do we manage all these things at an enterprise level? That's their role, and many more things. But is it their role to go down and to say, oh, this field in this database here is actually, is should be a car 20 and not a car 15 or whatever? This is something that goes back to the team. So that's where the federation is also working very well. So and when you're looking at as a principle, so that's a federation part, there's a computational part. The computational part is also because it's not only about data anymore. Okay, when you're thinking, okay, yeah, it's a data mesh, it's about organizing data, it's about using data, but it's not only about it's is there's also all the resources that are connects to that are your infrastructure around data. There's all this, so all that for me goes back into the computational part. Okay, and when you're thinking about the cloud as well, one very interesting thing about the cloud and data is you can grow storage independently from compute. Okay, so that's also a newer concept that compared to the traditional RDBMS and what's not. Um, and the thing is, it's also computational because it's also augmented by automation. Okay, so you've got your data governance cannot be only manual.
Got it. And just kind of, I'll hop into your own metaphor there, like the whole governance element, right? This layer of security, you know, similar
Yeah.
to how the local governments can work. Does everything have to go through this federal level of authentication, or is there kind of backdoor methods where, for example, cluster A can communicate with cluster C, whatever have you, right? Essentially, like to use the states where Florida and California decide between them to make some sort of agreement that's mutually beneficial. Can both of those independent states authorize any interaction, or does it always have to go through the next layer above the federal layer?
Yeah, I'm not completely sure that Florida and California is going to do anything ever,
That's
but
true.
but but on principle, the idea is not the idea is uh, the idea of the mesh. If you keep it to the state level, okay, California can do something with Florida, okay, and vice versa. It doesn't go in one way. So they have this partnership. Governance is out of the loop because governance addicts a principle that, hey, whatever California is doing should be compatible with whatever Florida is doing.
Okay,
And that's what's coming from governance. Okay, and that the
got it.
and that if they say this is this level of classification of data for Florida, it's the same thing for California. No difference. Now, at the level, whether they track emission in a certain way in California versus or how much money they want to put on tracking emission in California versus Florida, for example. I would say that's at the business unit level. Okay, so
Got it.
what is important? What is important to them? What is important to the constituent? What is important to the consumer in a way, right? But you're defining that, hey, if going back to the emission, this is how we measure emission. This is the
Mm,
business rule on how we are measuring emissions. Or in the case of PayPal, for example, TPVs, which is a total of volume of payment we're doing. Okay, so a business unit kind of decided, well, I'm going to exclude this versus this, etc. So it's same rule for everybody, and that's coming. That can come from the ground up but once it's approved at a central governance level, then it's the same for everybody.
Got it. So I guess the best way to think about this is, essentially, while the info doesn't, I'm guessing it doesn't necessarily always have to go through the overseer in this situation. There needs to be pre-given permission for those two to interact, right? So like, there's always this kind of layer of security, shall we say, from a central point
Yeah. So
to authenticate.
so so see so not anybody, but if we're keeping on the analogy of the states, okay, not anybody in
Mhm.
Florida has access to all the data of Florida, and same thing in California, right? But the thing is, what you can say is, hey, anyone with this level of qualification in Florida can access my data in California as well. Okay, so it doesn't. It's a bit of a matrix ways of looking at the data. So in this way.
And I
But
guess
anyway, so that's
in that sorry, go ahead. um,
no,
I,
yeah, that was the four
yeah, the
principles or
four
whatever.
principles. Yeah, I was just gonna like round it out on that thought. So essentially, it's a case of to that whole example you're giving. Once the permissions are defined clearly, they can essentially self-regulate, right? Like you don't always have to keep dialing back through like the next layer up. They can directly communicate with the rules that they've been most recently given by the central body.
Correct, and of course
Okay.
policies have their own life cycles. Uh, um, yeah, policy have their own life cycle. There's a lot of feedback also going from the ground to the
Mhm.
to the central organization as well. Okay, so when I'm defining this specific metric, or when I'm defining this field and giving this very particular definition of that, instead of keeping it for myself, okay, data mesh enables that to go also to the central repository where it can be used and reused by other people as well. So
Okay. And what kind of layers do you have to help keep that secure? Because it sounds like a secure system as long as the central point hasn't got any fundamental flaws, right?
yeah, um, security at PayPal is no joke.
For sure.
So um, it's it's very mature, and it's very interesting. So one take we decided is to access the metadata level, or the dictionary observability of each data quanta. We wanted to have very limited role. Okay, so for that, you of course you need to be certified, you need to be on our network, blah blah blah. All this, you've got all this access security, but you don't have any specific permission to say that, hey, I want to have access to this data quanta and start observing what is going, what the type of data is offering. After that part, and you've got to ask for access to it. Okay, so it's not like it's open bar. It's really, it's kind of almost open bar when it comes to discoverability, but it doesn't mean because you discover it that you have access to
Okay.
it. Okay, so that's where you get into a classical mechanism of accessing for rights, which is a self-service process already at PayPal. And then you just ask, hey, I want to have access to this data. This is a business justification for accessing the data, and if your case is met, then a couple of people give you approval, and you've got access to it. So
Got it. It's
pretty
basically
pretty
the
pretty
kind
encouraging.
of I'd say that the focus point here is it's all about discoverability, right? Like this isn't about you getting access to the information; it's about you knowing where to look for the information. Essentially, like when you go in the library, you're like, I want to get the readings by I don't know. I'm trying to throw out a fancy Charles Darwin's. I want to find out some stuff about Charles Darwin. I'm going to check the library's register to see 1567 in the green section. But then maybe I go
Yes.
to that section and it's a locked off area. I need to go get permission. That's kind of what you're purveying here. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. You get to the cover. You get to the offers, the year it was published, eventually an excerpt, eventually a little sample data, and you can look at it, but nothing that would expose anything from PayPal. Then you've got to have access. And when you're thinking about that, and you were asking, about this my 5-year plan, one of the feature I'd like to have uh, is to have synthetic data for so you're looking for that specific um, that specific Charles Darwin book, okay, but you may not have to, you may not need to have access to it to do your work, right? Your the cliff notes, the summary of the book might just be enough for this book for your work, and then you could imagine that you've got a different set of permission for that as well. Okay, so uh, when you're thinking about the developers that is building a report, it can be on, I wouldn't say fake data, but it could be on synthetic data, and then
Okay.
when the report is need to be run with higher level of confidentiality, then it would be run against the real data, and so you can have this level of security as well. So that's something in the catalog.
That's interesting that it covers that. I mean, it sounds like a fairly efficient process. What I think we can do now is we're kind of getting towards the end here. As I'm going to field maybe an interesting question we got quite early on from Mirko. They were asking if you could highlight one or possibly more specific use cases that would have been practically impossible to achieve if you weren't using the data mesh architecture that you're now targeting.
I don't think I well we probably would need an hour introduction to the use case because they're really tied to how we work at
Okay.
PayPal. But what I can say is, so far nothing we have done with data mesh could not have been done otherwise.
Okay.
It sounds like is this guy in favor of the data mesh or not? Okay, but the thing is,
Yeah,
however,
you want us to just go back to what we
uh,
had?
yeah, exactly. However, we want it's going to the market faster.
Hmm.
It's more accessible to many more users, and not only the ones that I kind of initiated this. And the entire process is a lot more governed that without the data mesh. So that's the whole thing. It's really,
Hmm.
we could achieve the same thing, but this one's better and more reliable.
Got it. And by the way, if anyone else has got questions, pop them in while we do, of course, still have JGP with us. But to kind of carry on from your point, like what you've described to me is, this isn't necessarily going to be the go-to solution for incredibly specific use cases, right? It's more that I'm not going to use the word jack of all trades. That always discounts these type of things, but it's essentially it's giving you multiple layers of access points, right, to justify whether this user should be going in at this level or that level. And essentially, what you're trying to do is give them a more efficient method of getting less restricted data, shall we say?
Yes, and even it can also be with restricted data, but that's not kind of our main scope right now. But
Yeah.
that's exactly it. You just got this kind of layer access, and faster access to data, remove friction, remove gated processes. Yeah.
Which, of course, it has a knock-on effect, not just in saving time for the person who's searching for the data, but then there might be things they're searching for that they now don't have to wait around for authentication from 5 or 6, maybe even 7 different people who already have a lot of stuff on their plates.
Yeah, and people on vacation, and all this. When you're we're getting Thanksgiving, I can tell you that this week there's a lot less done in at PayPal. The mails take a little bit longer to be solved. I'm officially on vacation as well, so um so um there's all this process. I'm not against process. I'm kind of in favor of process, but what I'm trying to be extremely careful is gates on the process, because when you've got gates, you've got control, you've got validation, you've got something that stops the person. So I'm not against gates, but they need to be wise. And I think that the data mesh allows you as well to be wiser on those gates as well. So,
Yeah, I've got a feeling this question might lean in a bit to the whole overseer thing we were talking about with the whole, federal level example. But David Horby
yeah,
asks, how do you deal with GDPR? Example, data deletion requests.
that's a good one. I don't know, David. And why I don't know yet is because when the data comes to us, it's we are mostly dealing with aggregated data for us now. Okay, so uh, but we have central policies, and the central policies are coming, as I said, from the central enterprise data governance. And even if we don't have any GDPR specific case as of now, I know that it's coming. So it doesn't mean that we didn't try to anticipate a little bit about it. But because GDPR is a central policy, uh, the way we implemented each data quantum, when a new policy comes into the game, it will automatically apply to everybody at the data quantum level. It still needs a kind of a local implementation of the data, but the policy itself can be forced down, and then things like
Awesome.
GDPR, right of being forgotten, etc., will come. Okay, so there's all that will not be a problem.
Okay. And it's been an interesting discussion, Jean George. I think we're more or less out of time, though. Apologies for that. But honestly, been a treat to talk to you. I love the way you kind of, gave plenty of metaphors, relatable things to make sure even my brain could lock on. But if anyone wants to talk to you more about these things, is there somewhere that they can actually connect with you?
Yeah, so thanks Darren for the kind words, and yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. um, if you reach me to LinkedIn, if you can leave a note, because I've been bombarded by people on LinkedIn. So say, hey, I've been at Big Data Europe, and can we follow up on something? Okay, uh, or that that's a little bit better, so I know a little bit more about the context. But I'd love to exchange more with people and discuss with learn from people. So yep, anytime, please.
Awesome. Yeah. Just make sure that you put that type of info there. Don't just message them and start opening up a PayPal like, oh no, someone else who wants to request like, I don't know, $100,000 or something. I don't have that permission. I can't
Yeah,
give you that money. But Jean
I've
George,
got so
it's been
many
an absolute
friends in the.
pleasure. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Likewise, thank you so much. No, I said I had a lot of friends which are princes in Victoria. Okay, so
Hey
let's
man,
try
they're,
to
they're looking
avoid
to get
more.
hooked up. But they'll have
Hey,
to maybe wait for the data mesh to be sorted so you have a next level of sway at PayPal first. But honestly, I'm not going to keep you any longer. I think we've got to kick off another talk in a minute or two, and I've definitely
sure.
taken up enough of your time. Absolute pleasure, Jean George. I'm sure we'll see more of each other in the future. Farewell.
I hope so. Thank you, Darren. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody. And have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.
Bye bye.